here today to provide some commentary and some color to the picture of 6 additional law enforcement officers being charged for failure to intervene. These are the 6 other officers who were present when Christian was murdered and who did not stop the murder but facilitated that murder. In Colorado, when an officer fails to intervene, when an officer fails to act to stop another officer from committing a crime, such as wrongfully entering someone's vehicle, from assaulting someone, from murdering someone, these are all crimes. These are the crimes of failure to intervene. And the charges today send a message to law enforcement that you must act. You may not stand by and participate or watch your fellow officer commit a crime. You have a duty to stop it. You have a duty to act. You have a duty afterwards to say, this is wrong. And it is shocking today that 2 agencies have issued statements saying their officers didn't do anything wrong. Well, that's not true. And what's the most alarming about that is how these agencies within 12 hours can issue statements that their officers did nothing wrong, yet did not issue statements that caused this family to grieve even more in this tragedy, correcting the record about what happened that night. They let this family believe that Christian attacked these officers and deserved to be killed. They let this family believe that while they buried their son. And that is wrong. And we need to demand more from our law enforcement. If they can come and issue a statement this fast that their officers did nothing wrong, then they should have corrected the record that Christian did nothing wrong when he was murdered. So I'm going to turn it over to Simon and Sally, and I'm certain all of you have a lot of questions for them too.
Thank you, everyone. I want to go back to when we found out that Christian had been killed, and you probably heard some of this before. I came home to the house to find Sally lying on the doorstep with a friend in a complete state of shock. I found out what had happened. The 2 police officers from Boulder County had been there and said, Christian, your son is dead. I knew nothing else. We knew nothing else. Called the coroner a couple of hours later. The coroner said that Christian attacked the police, that it was, and things like that. I hung up. I couldn't listen to it. A friend then called up and got the whole story, including that Christian committed suicide by cop. Sally phoned up the victim support or something person and was told, well, you shouldn't be attacking the police. So that was the way it started, and that was our reality and our truth for many weeks. We found it very hard to believe, not to say impossible to believe, but very, very strange, but that's what we were told. We tried, particularly me, to believe the police because the police, we thought, would be truthful. We thought that, an official statement released by Clear Creek County Sheriff would have some elements of truth in it. So we went through our funerals, with Christian's funerals, believing, everyone there, believing that Christian was at fault. And you can imagine what that was like. it was awful. We couldn't talk about it. We couldn't really say anything about what happened. We just felt really terrible. So after that, obviously the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks, we slowly came to realise that it wasn't true. The body cam footage came out, our lawyers spoke to the DA, and it became clear that in fact Christian was attacked, viciously attacked and murdered. And Q, I still remember you saying, something like your son was murdered. And that sounds so easy now, but at the time, to believe that your son would go for a drive in the country which he's done 100 times and be attacked and killed by the police, it was impossible to believe. So I just wanted to go through that and set the scene for what happened here. And that is basically the pain that we started with, and the process of the last 17 months of trying to, first of all, figure out the truth, and secondly, clear his name, and thirdly, get justice for Christian. Christian Glass should be alive today. He should be sitting here with us. We're about to go for a Thanksgiving break. He should be coming with us. There's no reason that he was murdered. And it's an ongoing process, but we intend to seek justice. Thank you.
So we'll take a few questions for Simon and Sally.
Yeah, Simon and Sally, what was your response when you learned that 6 additional officers would be charged in this case? If you could step up closer to the microphone, please.
Well, it's something we've been asking for and pushing for, because those 6 officers didn't pull the trigger, but they had an absolute duty and responsibility to stop that rogue cop. And a couple of them knew he's got prior violent history, and he was out of control, and every one of them should have said stop, and they all had a duty to do that. That's part of wearing the uniform. It's something we've really campaigned for. I don't believe that any one of those officers should be serving. They have no right to serve because they have shown that they can't protect us and they can't serve us because they didn't do it that night. If something goes wrong, they stood there idly by, and that a police officer can't do that. So it's something we have been pushing for, and something we're very grateful that the district attorney has spent a lot of time, due care and attention. She's really thought about it. She's a very considered lady, to be smart about putting forward charges that are appropriate and, importantly, that will stick.
I've heard you all over the last year, more than a year now, say that you wanted to see these other officers charged. Do you feel heard by this decision?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we're very pleased that this has come about. I don't understand prosecution or any of this stuff. I don't understand the police very well. It's just normal people. But that's why we have prosecutors. That's why we have public prosecutors to do their jobs and to keep us safe and to put the criminals away. So very pleased that this happened, yes.
I think it's a 2020 law, isn't it? Failure to intervene after George Floyd, but it's very, very important. There are bad apples. There are rogue cops. Christian faced an evil bully that night with Andrew Buen, and 6 of them stood by and let him be murdered. And it's terribly wrong.
Have you learned any insight from the district attorney about the timing of these additional charges?
Yeah, we can answer that. Yeah, I think that a definite. Yeah, I mean, the insight is nothing insider or anything like that. It definitely was that when Officer Gould, Sergeant Gould, took responsibility and pled guilty to failure to intervene, he was a man who was off-site. And you simply cannot intellectually look at this situation and say, look, the supervisor who was off-site that night accepted responsibility, pled guilty to failure to intervene, and then the officers who were actually there should not face the same charges. And so I think the VA has done an admirable job. She's doing it logically and methodically, and that definitely the guilty plea by Sergeant Gould has probably had a profound and direct impact in her decision-making to charge the remaining officers.
And I wanted to ask Sally, you talked a little bit about the heart-shaped rock that you carried yesterday, and it's a reminder to practice compassion and forgiveness. Is it also a callback to the symbol that we know Christian was making from his car that night?
I carry this rock. Compassion. I think kindness and compassion. I am working on forgiveness. It's tough, honestly, but kindness and compassion is really important. But the main reason I carry this rock is this is. I feel like this is some of Christian with me. This rock is in his car. This is Christian's rock. So this was in his car when he was killed. And it just shows you the type of kid he was. What 22-year-old guy do you know carry a heart-shaped rock in their car? He was a gentle, kind, artistic soul. He did do that heart shape. And did you see, he also prayed, please, Lord, don't let them smash my window. He was very spiritual as well. So I think this is just it gives you an idea of the sweet, kind kid that he was. Because this was Christian's rock.
I get both of your perspectives on statements we've seen from the law enforcement agencies now. CSP very quick to defend the trooper who was there. The Idaho Springs Police Department talking about Officer Mora, who is said to have been very compassionate in that moment. He says shouldn't have been part of these charges. What do you say to those police leaders who are defending their officers right now?
I can't believe it. It's been less than 24 hours and they've issued a statement saying that their officers did nothing wrong. Christian's not here, he's dead. It's obvious what they did wrong. They let this crazy bully, one of them authorised them to smash into the car. It's obvious what they did wrong. It's disgusting. They should have issued a press release the day after Christian was murdered and said, no, our officers were there, this is what we saw. This is the truth of it. So I think there's a culture problem, and I haven't read the statements, but whatever agencies are issuing statements like that, they need to get a good hard look, in my view.
And I think with the state trooper, we haven't watched the video. We've always said, who can watch their son be murdered, right? We're never ever going to watch it. You can't unsee that. But that state trooper, I have been told, was told by his supervisor to leave. This kid is doing nothing wrong. You need to leave the site, and he didn't. That's something he didn't do. So he already knew what was happening was wrong. And, the state has given us $3 million in admission, knowing that they don't do that lightly, right? They know they did something wrong. That man did nothing. It's not that they didn't do anything wrong. That's the point. They didn't do anything. And they should have done.
They also issued you apologies. Does this make you think about those apologies in a different way?
That's a really hard question. I felt the apology from the Idaho Springs seemed very genuine, much better, obviously, than the terrible one we got from Clear Creek County. But you hope it wasn't just lip service. You hope that they really meant it. I don't know so much about the Idaho Springs officer, honestly, because I haven't watched it. So.
The non-economic changes Sally and Simon made were directly related to this issue, that officers need to be trained on de-escalation, they need to be trained on the need to intervene. CSP has this entire training where they're showing a video of this family to all of their troopers, saying, this is your duty to intervene. They're going to create a VR training program based upon Christian Glass's scenario so that other officers can say, hey, where could I step in and intervene? Yet they're sitting here saying, my officer did nothing wrong. What message are they sending to their troops? We hoped that through the civils case, through the criminal cases originally, that there would be a change in law enforcement. That law enforcement would see that, hey, we need to better discipline our officers when they don't intervene. We need to take action and not let them be officers when they fail to intervene. But again, this is some of the old-fashioned thinking. These statements, them issuing these statements, going straight to just defending their officers' conduct, it's deplorable. And the community needs to be outraged. They not only need to be outraged about Christians' death, and I think the community has been outraged for the last year and a half about Christians' death, but they need to be outraged at these leaders within these departments who put their names on these letters and issued them. They are the ones who need to be held accountable because they cannot talk out of both sides of their mouth. They cannot go and apologize to this family, have the governor on his own watch this video and say, this is deplorable, and apologize to this family, and then train their officers saying, you need to intervene. Yet when the rubber hits the road and their officer is charged with failure to intervene, they circle the wagons and say their officers did nothing wrong. That is disgusting. It's deplorable, and these leaders within these departments need to be held accountable. And if their bosses won't do it, then the public needs to hold them accountable.
Steve, I think what we're seeing is the historic moment that we're in and why it's so important, right? Why these charges matter. Because you've been following this from day one. You've seen all the changes that have been made, all the taxpayer dollars that have been paid, all the apologies, and yet law enforcement looks in the mirror and says, we've done nothing wrong, right? It's going to take a district attorney and likely a jury to tell law enforcement what their duty to intervene actually means because they don't seem to understand it. And that's why this is so important. And that's why Simon and Sally Glass's advocacy and persistence and constant, just please charge everyone, why it's so important. And so we could not be more proud of them for this. And as this unfolds, and as we see justice happening for Christians, we truly hope every law enforcement officer who now looks at their book and says, we did this by the book, that they finally throw that book into the bonfire and say, we need a new book, that this is a new day. We have to take these laws seriously, that laws apply to us as well, and that we will step in, that simply being kind to a kid for a couple of minutes before your buddy blows him away is not sufficient for intervening. That you need to save this man's life. He called for help, and they should have actively done something. That simply doing nothing is insufficient.
And remember, Sally and Simon don't want to be here. They are here to fight for Christian and fight for everyone in this country and everyone in this state. They want to protect the lives of someone else's beautiful child. And the only way they can do that is by continuing to get up here day in and day out, and they don't want to do that. They would hope law enforcement would say, we're suspending these people immediately, and they should have done that a year and a half ago. It shouldn't have taken the district attorney to bring these charges. They should have done the right thing. They should have removed their post-certification. They should have let them go a year and a half ago.
All right, we'll take a few more questions.
Sally and Simon, you wanted everybody charged all along, but is this charge enough? It is a misdemeanor, not a felony. I'm just wondering if you think this charge is enough.
Well, it is what we have. In my simplistic view, when a group of people get together and commit a murder, they're all responsible. But when it comes down to the law, I suppose there are individual charges and individual people. So it is what we have.
You do consider them responsible?
Absolutely. Every single one of them there that night. If I'd been there that night, I would have stopped it. Yes, it's obvious because of the cover-up afterwards. I mean, as I said before, you know, no one told the truth. So if there was any sort of, you know, good behaviour there, it didn't come out afterwards.
I think I just to echo that it's breaking that blue wall of silence. They've got each other's backs. That's their first priority. Get each other's backs. Let's bury this fast. We know things from the commissioners how they did that. They tried very hard in those first couple of days to get the story out and get it buried, so that they literally tried to get away with murder. And if it wasn't for the body cam footage, they killed the only witness. They would have got away with murder. Clear Creek County Police Force had a lot of rotten apples in it.
We'll take one more question. Okay.
I'll ask you this. You know, you said that Christian was the one who kind of stand up to police. What do you think he would think about what's transpired over the last year and the charges that we saw?
Yeah, they called him the policeman when he was 6 at elementary school, but he had a very, very strong sense of justice, and he did stand up for the little guy. He did that throughout his short life. Yeah, he would be horrified. He would be horrified that this bully, that the whole thing that transpired that night, the people standing around, the madness of it, and that, you know, the outcome. It's so unjust. It's so unfair. It should never have happened. It really shouldn't ever happen again. And the lessons really need to be learned, because if we don't learn the lessons from these things, they'll just keep happening. They just happen again. So, you know, the people that have issued these statements that are saying they're not responsible, please have a look at yourself. Have a look at your organisation. If you won't, maybe the governor should. But we need to make some changes here. This is not a difficult case. You can't call 911 and get shot dead, you know, when you're calling for help. That doesn't happen in the real world, right? There's something horribly wrong here. So, you know, just start with that as your premise. Look through your policies, your organisation, your people, whatever you need to do, and make sure that this does not ever, ever happen again to another family in this country.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Don't repeat a lot of what I made this at the previous conference. Is there a reason for that?
It's Christian's favourite colour. Whenever he went to a wedding or it was a graduation, Christian always wore a pink shirt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.